My name is Kari Wendell McClelland. I was born in Detroit, Michigan. I've been living on these territories for probably approaching 20 years. And I work at the intersections of the arts, facilitation, public engagement, justice-oriented work, purpose-oriented work. Yeah, I'm a neighbor. I like living in the neighborhood. I live in Strathcona, downtown Eastside, Chinatown, and I have for a long time, and it's got a history, obviously starting with indigenous histories, but it's been a place of gathering for a long, long time. Music started very, very early. I remember like loving playing like one of those plug-in electric organs for kids when I was like, very young, 7, 6, something like that. Was really drawn to music very early. In terms of facilitation, I think formally I was introduced to facilitation through going to a youth arts camp called Power of Hope. An incredible facilitator, artist, activist, now doctor, Sarah Kendall, invited me to come to a youth camp. And when I saw what was going on, and this is like, got to be close to 15 years ago or something. When I saw what was going on there, I was like, oh, wow, this is like something that I really want to learn more about and be a part of. I was like, transformational learning, people being really real in front of each other, and coming out the other end feeling restored, stronger, more curious, more excited by what human beings are capable of. And so I'd say since then, definitely the two things have fed into each other. Music as performance, or music as publicly being shared. And then the kind of group work that I do with facilitation, I think there's something that's they fed each other, my willingness to be in front of people in a very bare and like honest way. I think it's part of the strength of what I do, as well as like, lots of different like tools and skills and methods. But I think central to all of that work is creatively, musically, and facilitation-wise is willingness to be myself in front of others. I mean, I think community engaged research for me and how it connects and overlaps with what I do as a facilitator is that it assumes that the expertise isn't held by one person or one body, that knowledge, wisdom, and understanding are not necessarily hierarchical in the way of like one person because of their status deserves to be lauded and another person doesn't deserve to be heard or witnessed, or that they might not have an answer to some of the challenges or questions that we're trying to meet. I mean, that's kind of what I get from it, that it's not about experts who then, deduce and give proclamations. It's about trying to get a real representation of who the community is, or in my case, when I'm working with groups through facilitation, like all of the voices are really key and important, and it's not just the person who feels the most comfortable talking right away, or the person who may have the most experience inside of a particular space or with a particular subject, that through everyone's life experience, they will have encountered incredible challenges. They will have met those challenges. They will have met many people. It's just like every individual and the way that they think, the sort of questions that they're prone to ask could be very different from everyone else in the room, and their approach could be the thing that everybody needs to be able to look at the problem with new eyes or fresh eyes. So I think those are the things that I understand to run parallel between those two. Looking at music, I don't think it's necessarily a problem I'm trying to address, but what I am trying to address is the human condition, which is, what the things that are challenging, but also the things that should be celebrated. And I hope that in my facilitation as well, that that's also a big part of what I deem to be essential inside of a space, is actually to be able to identify places of celebration, to be able to identify when our peers or the cohort are doing things well, even if that's just like listening well to one another, acknowledging, when someone else is meeting a challenge. Maybe it's something that might be easy for someone else, but for that person, you can really see that they really moved through a lot of struggle in order to be able to meet that moment. That's worthy of celebration. So, yeah, just really trying to actively consider where there are moments for us to all just like have gratitude and to give praise. Those things are essential. I feel like central problems, yeah, inequality, those are things that I think about regularly. How to give voice to folks who often don't have their voices heard, how to share voice around the room. One central thing that I'm trying to address with everything that I'm doing, other than my own sense of curiosity as it relates to the human condition. And like sometimes there are structural issues that are creating particular kinds of circumstances for me and for other people. But I think it really starts or begins with, yeah, that very personal desire to like understand, to be curious about, and yeah, to want to see people thriving and doing well. Like it's hard for me to see suffering, which I think is true of most people, but I think it's part of what I'm trying to address sometimes through my work, the suffering of individuals, myself included. I think that most people have really good ideas about how they can improve their own lives, but also be a help or a support to some of the larger challenges that face their families, their neighborhoods, their communities. And I think that there's lots of things that get in the way of us really connecting with those ways of being, or connecting with those visions that we have for how things could be. And I think the arts have a very interesting way of giving people permission to dream, to think, to vision, and to actually connect with what gives their bodies joy and pleasure and catharsis. So like complex, like both the simple kind of like, yeah, I feel good, but also the more complex cathartic thing, which is like that there may be grief inside of them. There may be sadness or loss or frustration or anger or rage even, but there's a way in which the arts, include humor, music, visual art, storytelling. These things have this capacity for giving us a way to express, as well as the written, things that just lie internally, sometimes dormant, sometimes unexpressed. And I think our ability to put those things outside of ourselves, just outside of our minds and onto something outside of ourselves, increases the likelihood that we will find a way to act on those things. So, whether it's like a dream that you have for yourself, your family, or it's a dream that you have for your community, it's like, I think it can be easy to feel despondent or frustrated inside of the larger context of society. It's big, it's hard to feel like you have a lot of control. And so I think, that's part of what I'm trying to do, is to inspire people to feel like they actually can take action, that they actually can be active in pursuing the things that they hope for themselves and for their larger community. That first facilitated youth gathering, that was a huge milestone. It was like, I didn't feel like I had seen people be so honest in front of each other in that way, outside of people who were talking about their struggles with problematic substance use. And so it really kind of blew my mind just to see people engaging in a very honest and real way about the pain they were feeling, the joy they were feeling, the hopes they have for themselves, the hopes they have for the community, the world, their schools, their families. That's one. I feel like, you know, doing work in Uganda, doing work in Egypt, feeling the power of the work outside of the context of the Canadian or you know, U.S. Pacific Northwest kind of context, and seeing the work also thrive in other contexts, and realizing that there was something that was very humanizing across a lot of difference that helped people to feel empowered and to feel like they can individually and collectively create change was really inspiring. And since the birth of my kids, I think, and the pandemic, like, one, working online, a huge, like, realizing that the work actually could go online and be really impactful and really powerful. But then also, because of the way that I was reorienting myself in terms of my priorities and my consideration for others had to increase when I had children. And I feel that in my work with groups, I feel like I'm a better listener. I feel like I'm a better, more patient. I feel like I'm softer in my approach, not less stronger even, but softer at the same time. I can hold more responsibility without fear or the need to try to escape. A couple of things I'm like still in the midst of, like, sharing and sort of releasing the book Moving the Center with my co-author Andrew Kushner. I'm also continuing to work on a theater piece that I have been working on in collaboration with Urban Inc. called Confluence, looking at the intersections of Black and Indigenous communities through a fair span of history on Turtle Island, and specifically looking at where I'm from in Detroit, but also here on these lands as well. And constantly, you know, trying to grow myself as a facilitator, and part of how that happens is through me offering mentorship, but also me seeking mentorship. So yeah, those are some things. I mean, one, I feel like everyone has been incredibly welcoming and gracious. I felt like there are loads of possibilities for how I can collaborate with CIRI. And yeah, I'm just excited for what we will do together. This is nearly the beginning. And so, yeah, I can see lots of seeds germinating along the way. And yeah, I look forward. Hopefully we can do a little exit thing too, and I can maybe share back some of the things that came out of my time here.